We are in conversation with Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana today as we have heard his midterm budget policy statement being delivered earlier this week. It was such an important moment for the first time hearing what the plans and aspirations are under the government of national unity. Minister, thank you so much for your time with us. When you came into the National Treasury 4 years ago, your main goal was to change the way government spends money, invests money, and you are a person who loves investing in infrastructure. That has come out strongly in this year's midterm budget policy statement. Almost R1 trillion in the next couple of years to be spent on infrastructure. This is the whole point, isn't it? This is the whole point of what economic growth drivers will be, where they'll come from.
Yes, I mean, it has been a journey, and that's why I was, even in the conclusion, I mentioned that saying it has been a journey. Transforming public finances is not an event. It takes a while because they're already vested interest and already some programs which we can't simply shift on a day. So I have been, just been in my dream and continue to do so, that we must shift the composition of expenditure substantially from consumption to capital investment. That's the journey.
And where should we invest? I know ESCOM is a big part, energy is a big part of it, water is a big part of it. It can't happen in one day, but what is the immediate infrastructure need that you want to focus on in the country?
Let me just say, water, we're in a water crisis situation. It's kind of an urgent matter that needs attention. We're increasing next year the water budget from about 40 billion rand to about 50 billion rand to make sure to deal with these issues. There's also the making sure Transnet can do its own investment. ESCOM is working on investing in transmission lines and other areas. We think that the road infrastructure needs to be upgraded. We make the point that the non-toll investment of about 85 billion rand, which is coming up from Sandra. So roads, dams, all of these things require investment. In their own way, they are likely to create more investment in other sectors.
Minister, you have been meeting since the MTBS with the investment community, and for the next couple of weeks you are going to meet some more, even in New York, to try and lure investors, because this infrastructure investment is not going to happen on its own. What are you going to be telling the investors?
The issue is, for investors, are you removing the bottlenecks which are making it difficult for people to invest? The structural reforms are intended to achieve that objective. Removing all those bottlenecks which are making it difficult for people to invest and to operate businesses. The second set of issues, even within the infrastructure space, we're creating a lot of incentives which will attract people to put more money into the infrastructure.
Basic income grant, it's been bandied about, and taking it from the social relief of distress grant. It is extended again up until March next year. Do you want to make it permanent, and can South Africa afford it?
Let me just put this a couple of issues. The first one is that given the low growth rate, a number of people are outside the system and poor. Therefore, it is imperative that some action must be taken to cushion the impact on those poor people. And the grant does that. Then the next set of issues, should you move to a basic income grant? Again, for me, is not is a practical question. If the resources were allowing us to do so, I would say, yes, let's move to a basic income grant. I wouldn't have a problem. But it is an affordability issue. The economy in the present atmosphere cannot afford a basic income grant, simply put. Hence, we are urging for a focus on growth so that you must achieve the level of growth that can sustain the economy, including the redistributive program we're dealing with.
One other thing that has come up is your views that you are not convinced quite right at this moment that South Africa should move to a lower inflation target. Currently we're at between 3 and 6%. Inflation has been coming down, and your partners in the central bank have been quite vocal, particularly the central bank governor, that it may be time to move with emerging market countries towards a lower inflation target in order to be competitive.
Let me put it this way. I don't want to be the governor and I in different positions. We have got what is called a macro standing committee, which reports to both the governor and I. And in this space, it did make this presentation, and we agreed with the governor that more work needs to be done. So I don't want this notion that there's a disagreement between the governor and I on this matter. When the macro standing committee between the Standard Bank and National Council provided a joint report to us, we then said some work needs to be done. And it is that work that needs to be done that will inform our posture on this matter.
Something interesting that you said today, as much as you said it in the midterm budget policy statement, is that in the government of national unity, as you presented this budget, as you were preparing for it, there was no dissenting voice among the 10 political parties that are in the GNU. Some people could say that it's the parties in the GNU trying to really sell this unity, this GNU, because it has to last 5 years, even when the economy is not doing well, government planning is not right. In spite of all of that, all these political parties are trying to sell a united front at the expense of the public.
No. I say, insofar as the budget is concerned, there have not been a dissenting voice. We have been on the same page as far as the budget is concerned. But there are differences on other issues which are outside the budget debate. For instance, I would be misleading you if I say there's no disagreement on the NHI rollout. Even there is not on the principle of the NHI. No one is opposed to an NHI. What the difference would emerge is what are the key aspects, some aspects of which some of the parties in the NGNU are uncomfortable with. And we'll set a process in motion to deal with those issues.
Explain that process, because NHI is such an important part.
Let me just say to you, the way I understand it is that Minister Mswaleti is going to provide us with a strategy for the rollout. Arising out of that rollout of the NHI strategy, and people who have got differences on some aspect of those, they will then point out the detail of the aspect, then deal with the NHI in the abstract.
Minister, the issue of the growing wage bill, one of the single highest expenditure items This time around, you are saying 11 billion rands is set aside for the next 2 years, encouraging those who are between the ages of 55 and 59, who are public servants working in government, to take early retirement. What exactly would it mean for government expenses, for government expenditure as far as the wage bill is concerned?
Let me start by saying your major problem arises out of the fact that you've got a series of agencies that get money from the fiscus that sits outside the Public Service Act. And the individuals there are paid higher, some of them higher than the president. I can tell you now the CEO of Newzroom is paid more than the president. All right? So, in my view, you need to rationalize all of that stuff. There are about 160,000 people employed in it. Rationalize all of that. At the same time, you've got these people, but you don't have enough people in Home Affairs. At the moment, Home Affairs sits at about 40% of its own requirement. So you need to be restructuring in such a manner that that kind of those agencies are some of them are restructured substantially in order to get more funding and put more people in Home Affairs and put more people, more teachers, more doctors and nurses, more social workers. So in that sense, that you've got a disjuncture in the sense that frontline services are starved of personnel, and they've got all of these institutions that are sitting out there. So that's the first restructuring we're talking about. But in between, you will be having this early retirement, which is intended to achieve two objectives. The first one is to deal with headcount, but the second one is to kind of change the age profile of certain departments which require some young talent. So those are the kind of restructuring things we're doing in the public service.
You spoke about a 3-year process to research the reconfiguration of government. Is that still continuing? And what kind of animal would you like to see at the end of it?
That is still continuing because that was the president's announcement. But it included a reconfiguration of department as well. But the GNU has kind of destabilized the departmental part of that function, but the rest of the work continues.
Minister, thank you so much for your time. Minister Enoch Godongwana, the Minister of Finance, with us here on Newzroom Afrika. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I am Xolani Mbanjwa in Cape Town.